Cole Hartman was known across the valley for two things: his wealth and his horses. People said he could buy any land he looked at, and that every horse on his ranch was trained to perfection. But there was one horse that embarrassed him daily, a young white stallion with a silver mane that moved like river water. They called him Ghost Runner, because no one ever managed to stay on his back, and he ran like a flash of light whenever someone came close. Cowboys joked that the horse had a personal grudge against men. 30 riders had tried. 30 had failed. Cole didn't laugh at the jokes. Every failure felt like a personal challenge. He had raised horses all his life, yet this one refused to accept him. The stallion had thrown his best riders, broken 2 fences, and kicked a bucket so hard that it flew over the barn roof. And now, the whole town watched to see if Cole would ever tame the animal he bragged about buying. One evening, after another cowboy limped away holding his shoulder, Cole stood at the corral fence looking at the restless animal. Dust swirled around the horse's hooves. Ghost Runner's eyes were bright with energy, but there was something else, too, fear, maybe. Cole wasn't sure. His pride wouldn't let him admit that he was losing a battle with a horse, so he made a decision out of frustration. "If anyone can ride him," Cole said loudly in front of the men, "I'll pay them more than a month's wages." The offer spread through town before sunset. Boys, cowboys, and travelers came to see the stallion that humbled every rider. Most people came only to watch. A few brave souls planned to try. All of them failed. The horse seemed to have a special skill for predicting the exact moment a rider's weight shifted. He bucked with such force that grown men flew like straw in a storm. By the end of the week, Ghost Runner had earned a reputation that no one wanted to test anymore. Even the bravest riders said the horse was cursed. Cole felt cornered. The challenge he created became a kind of entertainment for the town. People came just to laugh and shake their heads at the rancher's stubbornness. He had money, he had land, but he couldn't tame one horse, and that bothered him more than anyone knew. On a warm afternoon, when the world seemed quiet and dusty, a small stagecoach rolled into town. The horses pulling it looked tired, and the wheels squeaked with every turn. No one paid much attention to it. Stagecoaches passed through all the time, but when the door opened, a young woman stepped out, holding a worn suitcase. Her dress was neat but simple, and her brown hair was tied back tightly to keep the wind from tangling it. Her name was Evelyn Carter. She had come from the East, traveling across states and empty lands, answering a letter from a schoolteacher who wanted a mail-order bride. She didn't know anyone in the West. She hadn't even seen the man she was supposed to marry. All she carried was hope and a quiet determination to build a new life. When she walked into town, she looked around for the schoolteacher. She waited near the post office first. Then she checked the general store. Then she asked a kind woman who sold bread. That woman's face softened with regret. "Honey, he left 3 days ago," the woman said. "Family trouble back east. He won't be coming back anytime soon." Evelyn felt the world tilt slightly. She didn't have friends, money, or a plan. Every mile she traveled suddenly felt heavier. Still, she didn't cry. She simply nodded and thanked the woman. She had survived difficult years before. She would survive this too. She walked through town trying to find work. She was willing to cook, clean, sew anything to earn her stay for a while. But most people already had help, and others only offered temporary jobs that wouldn't keep her fed. When she reached the center of town, she heard loud laughter. Men were gathering near the saloon doors, talking about a challenge at the Hartman Ranch. 30 cowboys thrown off like feathers," one shouted. "That horse is wild as the wind," another added. "Cole should give up before he breaks someone's bones." Evelyn didn't understand at first, but she listened quietly. She learned about the stallion, the challenge, and the reward. The men were amused, but she wasn't. Something inside her stirred something familiar. Her father had been a horse trainer back east. A good one. A patient one. Evelyn had spent years beside him, learning how to understand horses from their breath, their eyes, and their steps. Her father had always said that horses spoke without words. You just had to listen. She had trained difficult horses before, though none as wild as the one described. But she didn't want to appear foolish by speaking up. She needed work, not attention. Still, curiosity grew in her heart like a spark. When she finally reached the ranch that evening, Cole was giving orders to his men. Irritated and tired. Dust covered his boots and frustration clung to his voice. He nearly walked past her until she stepped into his path. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I heard you might have some work." Cole blinked, surprised to see a young woman alone at sunset. He told her the ranch had no need for sewing or kitchen help, as both were already filled. Evelyn shook her head. "I'm not here for sewing," she said. He looked confused. "Then what kind of work are you looking for?" She swallowed once, gathering her courage. "I can train your stallion." Cole stared at her. Then he almost laughed, but stopped himself when he saw she was serious. "Miss, 30 men tried," he said. "Not boys trained riders. Ghost Runner threw every one of them." Evelyn nodded. "Then let me try." The cowboys standing nearby burst into disbelief. Some chuckled. Others shook their heads. A few muttered that it was too dangerous. Cole didn't know if she was brave or desperate. She didn't look foolish. She looked calm. Her eyes were steady, like someone who had seen hardship but didn't show it on her face. He crossed his arms and studied her. "Why would you want to risk it?" he asked. "Because I need work," she answered simply. "And because I understand horses." He pointed at Ghost Runner, who was pacing like a white storm cloud, restless and alert. "That's him," Cole said. "He doesn't let anyone get close." Evelyn stepped closer to the fence. For a moment, the world grew quiet. She watched the stallion's movements, the flinch in his shoulders, the way his ears twitched, the way his hooves shifted, as if preparing to flee. She didn't see anger. She saw fear buried under strength. "He isn't wild," Evelyn whispered. "He's scared." Cole looked at her sideways, unsure whether to believe her. No cowboy had ever said that. She turned back to him. "Give me one chance," she said softly. "Just one." Cole thought for a long moment. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky gold. Something about her voice, her calm, and her steady gaze made him pause. Finally, he nodded. "Tomorrow morning," he said. "Be here at sunrise." Evelyn thanked him quietly. The cowboys were still whispering when she left the ranch. Some said she wouldn't return. Others said she was crazy. But Cole watched her walk away with a thoughtful expression. He didn't know why, but he felt she might surprise him. That night, Evelyn found a small room to stay in, using almost the last of her money. She lay awake thinking about Ghost Runner, her father, and the chance she had been given. She wasn't sure if she could train the stallion, but she knew she had to try. Morning arrived with a soft breeze. Before the sky fully brightened, Evelyn walked toward the ranch. She didn't carry ropes or sticks or anything intimidating. She only carried her calm spirit and the quiet hope that the horse would see she meant no harm. And somewhere on the other side of the ranch, Cole Hartman looked out his window, wondering if the young mail-order bride would keep her promise and return. She did. And that morning would begin a story the whole valley would speak of for years. Evelyn reached the ranch even before the sun lifted above the hills. A thin layer of morning mist hung over the fields, and the world felt quiet, as if everything waited for something important to happen. She walked with steady steps, though her heart was beating fast. She had promised Cole she would return, and she intended to keep that promise no matter how frightened she felt inside. This wasn't just about a horse, it was about survival, dignity, and proving to herself that she still had value in a world that had been unkind to her. When she arrived, only 2 cowboys were awake, rubbing their eyes and pouring water over their faces to shake off sleep. They stared at her, as if surprised she had actually come back. One of them stepped forward and said, "Ma'am, maybe you should wait until the boss wakes up. No one's touched that horse this early." "No." Evelyn simply thanked him and walked toward the corral. She could already hear Ghost Runner snorting in the distance. The stallion sensed people long before anyone approached. She didn't rush. She moved slowly, letting the morning quiet settle inside her. She remembered the lessons her father taught her long ago. Before you ask a horse to trust you, you must show it you trust the world around you. By the time she reached the corral gate, the other cowboys were waking up. They gathered behind the fence, some curious, some shaking their heads, some whispering that this wouldn't end well. A few climbed onto the fence rails, eager to see what would happen next. It wasn't every day that a newcomer, especially a woman with no home and no horse of her own, walked straight toward the wildest creature in the valley. Cole stepped out of his house moments later, pulling on his jacket. He looked surprised when he saw Evelyn already at the corral. He had expected hesitation, maybe fear, maybe second thoughts. But she had arrived early, calm and composed. "You're here sooner than I thought," he said, walking over to her. Evelyn looked at Ghost Runner before answering. "Horses feel the day before the sun rises," she said softly. "This is the time when they listen most clearly." Cole raised his eyebrows. "Well, you're the only one who thinks that around here. The others prefer late mornings. People, endpoint, marker." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Horses don't." She stepped to the wooden fence and rested her hands on the top rail. Ghost Runner stood across the corral, powerful and alert, his white coat catching the first light of dawn. His ears flicked toward her, then away. He pawed the ground once, as if stating he was ready to defend his space. Evelyn didn't step inside yet. Instead, she sat down outside the fence, folded her hands in her lap, and simply watched him. The cowboys exchanged puzzled looks. No rider had ever started this way. Cole crossed his arms and leaned against the post near her. "What are you doing?" he finally asked. "Letting him see me as part of the morning," she said. "Not a threat, not a challenger." Ghost Runner continued to pace for a while, tossing his head. But something about her stillness made him curious. He kept glancing at her as if trying to understand why she wasn't acting like the others. Minutes passed slowly. The sun rose higher. Cowboys grew restless. Some muttered that this was a waste of time. One whispered, "This isn't horse training. This is sitting." 2. Cole wanted to defend her but wasn't sure how. He didn't understand what she was doing either, but he felt something happening, something he couldn't quite explain. There was a quiet patience in Evelyn that he had never seen before. And somehow, it affected even him. Finally, after nearly an hour, Evelyn stood up. She dusted her skirt lightly and looked at Cole. "I'm going in." Cole opened the gate for her but grabbed her arm gently before she stepped inside. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked. "If he charges, I won't reach you fast enough." Evelyn nodded. "He won't charge without warning, and if he warns me, I'll listen." Cole hesitated, then stepped back. The cowboys grew silent. Evelyn walked slowly into the corral. Ghost Runner lifted his head sharply. His tail flicked like a banner behind him, and his muscles tightened. But Evelyn did not change her pace. She moved the way wind travels across grass, soft, steady, without force. Ghost Runner snorted loudly, stamping the ground, sending dust rising around his hooves. The cowboys tensed, ready to shout or run. Cole leaned forward, his hand gripping the fence. Evelyn stopped several feet away from the stallion and lowered her eyes not in fear, but in respect. She didn't square her shoulders like a challenger. She didn't hold her hands out like someone trying to trap him. She stood quietly, letting him see she had no intention of overpowering him. The horse's ears flicked back and forth. He stepped sideways, testing her, waiting for her to move too fast. She didn't. Then Evelyn did something that stunned the entire ranch. She turned slightly so her body faced away from the stallion. She was still watching him from the corner of her eye, but her posture told him she wasn't trying to dominate. A cowboy whispered, "Is she ignoring him?" Another said, "Looks like she's giving up already." But Cole saw something different. He had worked with horses his whole life, and he knew what dominance looked like. This wasn't that. This was something gentler, something he didn't have a word for yet. Ghost Runner's breathing slowed a little. His hooves stopped scraping the dirt. His muscles relaxed, not fully, but enough for Evelyn to take a careful step closer. She moved in a rhythm, pausing after each step so he could decide whether to accept it. When she was close enough to feel his breath against her arm, she extended her hand, slowly. The stallion stretched his neck, sniffing her fingers. Cowboys held their breath. Ghost Runner didn't pull away. Evelyn didn't grab his mane or try to touch his face. Instead, she let him decide the moment. He stepped closer on his own, his nose brushing lightly against her sleeve. The entire ranch seemed to freeze. Cole felt his chest tighten with astonishment. No rider, not even he, had reached this point with Ghost Runner without a fight. Evelyn gently lifted her hand and touched the horse's neck. She expected him to flinch or pull back, but he stayed still. His muscles trembled under her hand. Not from anger, but from uncertainty. She stroked him lightly, whispering soft words that only he could hear. Her hand moved slowly, like a calming breeze brushing through grass. Ghost Runner let out a long breath, the kind horses release when they are beginning to trust. Cowboys began murmuring, disbelief spreading through the group. Cole pushed away from the fence and walked closer, unable to look anywhere else. Evelyn turned halfway toward him and gave a small nod. "He understands now," she said softly. "He knows. I'm not here to force him." Cole almost smiled, something rare for him when horses were involved. "You're doing more than any man on this ranch managed," he said. Evelyn continued working with the stallion through the morning. It wasn't easy. At times, Ghost Runner suddenly jerked his head, or backed up sharply, or kicked at the dirt. Once, he swung around so fast that Evelyn stumbled. Cole rushed toward her, worried she would fall, but she caught her balance quickly and lifted a calming hand. "I'm all right," she said, her voice steady. "He's not trying to hurt me. He's remembering something that frightened him." Cole stopped at the edge of the corral, confused. "How can you tell?" Evelyn looked at Ghost Runner with sad eyes. "Fear has a shape," she said. "His has been there for a long time." Well, she was a load. She was heaven of fear. A Plastenstan. Evelyn looked at Ghost Runner. She didn't explain further. But Cole felt her words in his chest. He had never seen fear inside the powerful animal. He only saw resistance. But now he wondered if he had been wrong. Hours passed. By late morning, Evelyn had managed to place her hand under the stallion's chin and guide his head gently down. Cowboys watched as Ghost Runner lowered himself calmly, something he had never done for anyone. Cole stepped inside the corral and approached Evelyn. "You did more than I expected today," he said carefully. "I don't know how you're doing it, but it's remarkable." Evelyn shook her head softly. "It's only the beginning," she said. "He has a long way to go, but he wants to trust someone." Cole studied her face for a moment. She looked tired, but peaceful, as if she had found a place where she belonged, even if just for a moment. When she finally stepped out of the corral, the cowboys actually clapped. Not loud, not rowdy, just respectful. It was the first time in weeks that the ranch felt hopeful about the stallion. Cole walked beside her as she headed toward the water trough to wash her hands. If you want to continue, he said, this ranch will always have work for you. Evelyn smiled faintly. Thank you. I'll be here tomorrow. What isn't to stay here? What isn't to stay here? What isn't to stay here? Cole opened his mouth to reply, but stopped himself. He wasn't sure what he wanted to say. Something about her soft strength unsettled him in a good way. Evelyn left the ranch that day with dust on her dress and sweat on her brow, but with courage glowing quietly inside her. She had taken the first step toward Ghost Runner's trust. And Cole Hartman, for the first time in months, felt a small flicker of hope not just for his stallion, but for something he couldn't yet name. Evelyn returned to the ranch the next morning with the same quiet determination that had surprised everyone before. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky with pale orange streaks. She carried no tools or ropes, only a peaceful expression and a confidence she kept hidden inside her heart. Ghost Runner was already awake, pacing near the far corner of the corral. The stallion lifted his head as soon as he sensed her footsteps on the dusty ground. Evelyn smiled softly when his ears flicked toward her. Maybe he remembered her from yesterday. Maybe he remembered the calm in her voice and the gentle touch on his neck. She hoped so. Cole had been waiting for her too. He stood near the fence with his arms crossed, pretending he wasn't watching the path she always took. But the moment he saw her, his shoulders relaxed a little. He hadn't been sure she would return again. She had already made more progress than any cowboy, yet she came back as if the challenge had only just begun. Good morning, Cole said, stepping toward her. You slept well? Evelyn nodded. Well enough, she replied. It's easier when you know your purpose for the next day. Cole didn't say anything to that. He looked at her for a moment, wondering how someone so small and quiet carried such steady strength. They walked to the corral together. The Cowboys started arriving, rubbing sleep from their eyes, curious to see if anything else would happen today. Most of them had stopped laughing at Evelyn's attempts. Now they watched her with a kind of respect they didn't openly speak about. Evelyn entered the corral, the same way she had before. Slowly, gently, with no sudden movements. Ghost Runner snorted, backed away at first, then paused when she didn't follow him too quickly. She waited. She always waited. She believed that trust wasn't forced. It was offered. After a few minutes, she stepped closer again. Her steps were light, almost like a slow dance. She let him smell her hand again. This time, he nudged her palm not roughly, not nervously, but with a curious softness. It was a small gesture, but Evelyn knew the meaning behind it. It was a beginning. She reached up and touched the stallion's neck. His muscles twitched, but he didn't pull away. She let her hand rest there for a long moment. Cole stood outside the fence, watching every movement, feeling more impressed with each passing second. The ranch had been filled with frustration for months because of this horse. Now, in just 2 days, Evelyn was bringing something different, something no strong hand had managed to bring. Cole finally stepped closer. Do you think you can get him to let you put a blanket on him today? He asked quietly. Evelyn didn't answer right away. She studied Ghost Runner's breathing, the shifting of his weight, the tension in his flank muscles. Then she nodded. If he's comfortable. Yes, she said, but only if he wants to. She moved slowly to the fence and asked one of the cowboys to hand her the soft training blanket. Cole watched carefully. He didn't want anyone moving too fast or startling the horse. She took the blanket gently in her arms and returned to Ghost Runner. The stallion lifted his head, sniffing the unfamiliar scent. He backed up a few steps, stirring dust. Instead of following him, Evelyn lowered her head and stepped back too, mirroring his movement. This surprised the watching men. Most horse trainers pushed forward when a horse pulled away. But Evelyn stepped back, showing him she understood his worry. Ghost Runner blinked slowly. He stopped moving. She raised the blanket again, letting him sniff it. She didn't touch him with it. Not yet. She let him understand it with his nose, then with the soft sound of the cloth brushing against her own arm. Cole realized she was teaching the stallion that the blanket wasn't a threat, but a harmless object. Ghost Runner lowered his head slightly, his ears relaxed. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Evelyn brought the blanket near his shoulder and let it barely touch his fur. Ghost Runner tensed for a second, and Evelyn froze. She held completely still until the tension faded. Then, when he didn't move away, she slowly draped the blanket over his back. The ranch became silent. Not one cowboy spoke. They watched as the wild stallion accepted the blanket without panic, without rearing, without fear. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Cole exhaled slowly, as if he had been holding his breath the whole time. He stepped closer to the fence and whispered, "I never thought I'd see that." Evelyn smiled, without turning around. "He wants to trust someone," she said. "He just needed someone to listen." She stroked the blanket lightly, letting Ghost Runner feel that nothing painful or frightening would happen. The stallion turned his head and looked at her, his soft eyes showing something new, curiosity without fear. She moved her hand down his neck, then to his shoulder. Everything she did was slow, gentle, respectful. A long time passed like that, Evelyn, working quietly, the stallion learning her touch, the cowboys watching without a word. Eventually, she took off the blanket and replaced it, letting him feel the weight again and again. Cole finally stepped into the corral. His footsteps were soft. He didn't want to break the quiet bond forming between Evelyn and the horse. "You've done more in 2 mornings than 30 of my best men did in months," he said softly. "How are you doing it?" Evelyn took a breath. "He isn't stubborn," she said. "He's scared. A horse can fight harder when frightened than when angry. He needs someone who understands fear, not force." Cole nodded, his expression deepening. He felt something shift inside him. He wasn't a careless man, but he realized he had never looked deeper into the stallion's past. He had only seen the struggle, not the reason behind it. Evelyn walked him in circles around her, guiding him with her gestures. Ghost Runner followed, sometimes hesitating, sometimes stepping confidently. The cowboys were impressed. Cole was speechless. Later, when the sun climbed high, Evelyn finally stepped out of the corral. She looked tired, sweat on her brow, dust on her dress, but she looked peaceful. Cole walked beside her. "You must be exhausted," he said gently. "We can stop for today. Horses don't learn in a single moment," she replied. "They learn in pieces." But he did well today. Cole wanted to say more. He wanted to thank her, to tell her that the ranch had not felt this hopeful in a long time. But he didn't know how to say it without sounding too emotional. Evelyn sensed his hesitation, but didn't push. She washed her hands in the cool water near the trough. Cole watched her quietly. For the first time, he realized that the woman who entered his ranch as a lost mail-order bride was something much more, someone with a deep strength and a gentle heart. Over the next hours, the ranch was filled with talk about her. Cowboys said they had never seen patience like hers. Some compared her to an animal healer. Others said she might be the only one who truly understood Ghost Runner. And Cole, though he didn't join those conversations, carried the thought silently in his mind. She is special. That evening, Evelyn walked back toward town. Cole watched her go. The same thoughtful expression he had worn the night before, returning to his face. He didn't say anything, but he stayed by the fence, long after she disappeared down the dusty road. He kept thinking about the way she had spoken to the horse, the way she had moved in perfect calmness, and the way Ghost Runner had responded as if recognizing a long-lost friend. The ranch felt different now, lighter, hopeful. As darkness settled and the stars appeared, Cole checked on Ghost Runner one last time. The stallion stood quietly, calm and peaceful, as if he had finally found a small piece of comfort. Cole whispered, "She'll be back tomorrow." The horse flicked his ears and snorted softly, almost as if he understood. And somewhere in town, Evelyn lay in her small rented room, thinking about the stallion, about the ranch, and about the unexpected path her life had taken. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, she only knew she was ready. Tomorrow, she would try something even greater. She would show the ranch that trust could build miracles. The next morning arrived with a soft wind that carried the smell of warm earth across the valley. Evelyn walked toward the ranch with calm steps. Though inside, she carried a mixture of excitement and nervous hope. Today felt different. She didn't know why. But something in her heart told her that Ghost Runner was finally ready to take a bigger step forward. She held no ropes, no saddle, no bridle, only her quiet confidence and the deep respect she had built with the stallion. When she reached the ranch, the Cowboys were already talking among themselves. The news of her success had spread quickly. Everyone wanted to see what would happen today. Even those who doubted her earlier now looked at her with something close to admiration. They had seen the impossible happen. Ghost Runner had accepted a blanket on his back without fear. That alone was a miracle. Cole stood near the corral, waiting for her. He didn't admit it aloud, but he had been awake since dawn, watching the road, wondering when she would appear. When he saw her approaching, a small, almost invisible smile touched his face. "You're early again," he said as she reached him. Evelyn nodded. Ghost Runner listens best at this time. The day hasn't crowded his mind yet. Cole opened the gate for her and stepped inside with her. The Cowboys gathered around the fence, some sitting high on the rails, others leaning forward, eagerly. Ghost Runner lifted his head the moment Evelyn entered. His white coat glowed faintly under the morning sun, and his silver mane moved softly with each breath. The stallion didn't pace this time. He didn't back away. He simply stood there, watching her with calm eyes. Evelyn approached slowly. She stopped a few feet away and extended her hand. Ghost Runner stepped forward and pressed his warm nose gently into her palm. It felt like a greeting, a quiet promise. "You remember me," Evelyn whispered. The stallion let out a soft breath that stirred a strand of her hair. Cole watched the exchange with amazement. Each day, this wild creature grew more trusting because of her. She had changed something deep inside Ghost Runner, something no rope or force could reach. Evelyn spent the first hour walking around the corral with the stallion following her. She changed directions, slowed down, sped up, and Ghost Runner matched her steps like a shadow. The Cowboys murmured to each other, unable to believe what they were seeing. The once untamable horse now moved with quiet obedience. Cole stepped closer to Evelyn when she paused near the fence. "Do you think he's ready?" he asked. Evelyn knew he meant the saddle. She looked at Ghost Runner carefully. His breathing was steady. His eyes were soft. There was no tension in his muscles. She nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "He's ready to try." A ripple of excitement passed through the Cowboys. Some hurried to fetch the light training saddle. Cole brought it over himself and handed it to Evelyn. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low with concern. "Yes," she said gently, "but you must move slowly too. He watches everyone." "You." She took the saddle and let Ghost Runner smell it first. The stallion touched it with his nose, flicking his ears as if trying to remember the earlier blanket. Evelyn slowly lifted the saddle and placed it against his side, letting him feel the weight without fastening anything. Ghost Runner tensed for a moment, but Evelyn placed her hand on his neck, whispering calm words. Cole stood beside her, ready to step in if anything went wrong, but he also trusted her enough not to interfere too quickly. After a long moment, Ghost Runner relaxed. Evelyn slipped the saddle into place and gently tightened the strap beneath his belly. It wasn't tight, just enough so it wouldn't slide. The ranch grew quiet. No one spoke. Every cowboy watched, hardly breathing. When Evelyn stepped back, Ghost Runner didn't buck. He didn't rear. He simply turned his head and sniffed the saddle. accepting it with surprising calm. Cole let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "I don't believe this," he whispered. I really don't." Evelyn smiled. He chose to trust. She walked beside Ghost Runner, guiding him slowly. The stallion moved smoothly, despite the weight on his back. It looked natural, as if he had been waiting for this moment. After a few minutes, Evelyn stopped and looked at Cole. She didn't say the words, but Cole instantly understood what she was thinking. "You want to ride him," he said quietly. Evelyn gave a small nod. The Cowboys tensed. Some whispered that it was too soon. Others said she was brave. A few muttered that they had seen enough miracles this week to believe she could do anything. Cole stepped closer, his expression serious. "If he reacts suddenly, I might not reach you fast enough," he said. "You don't have to do this today. You've already proven more than anyone expected." Evelyn looked at Ghost Runner. The stallion was standing calmly, his ears forward, his eyes steady on her face. "He's ready," she said softly. "I can feel it." Cole hesitated, but he stepped back, giving her space. He trusted her judgment more than his own. Evelyn placed her foot gently in the stirrup. She didn't rush. She moved slowly, letting Ghost Runner feel each shift of her weight. The stallion's muscles tightened for a moment, then softened again. Evelyn pulled herself up, as light as she could, and settled in the saddle. Ghost Runner stood still. Not a single cowboy spoke. Not even Cole moved. Evelyn lowered her hands and rested them gently on the saddle horn. She breathed calmly, letting the stallion feel her steady heart. After a long moment, she gently nudged him with her heel. Ghost Runner stepped forward. The ranch erupted into whispers of disbelief. Some cowboys stood up in shock. Others covered their mouths. A few laughed softly, out of pure amazement. Cole felt something warm rise in his chest: admiration, respect, and something deeper he didn't know how to explain. Evelyn guided Ghost Runner around the corral, each step slow and smooth. The stallion's ears twitched, but he didn't panic. He listened to every movement of her body. When she asked him to stop, he stopped. When she asked him to turn, he turned. For the first time since Cole bought him, Ghost Runner was being ridden. After several circles, Evelyn signaled Cole to open the corral gate. Cole hesitated. Evelyn nodded. "He's ready for a short ride around the ranch." Cole opened the gate slowly. Ghost Runner walked out with quiet confidence. Evelyn kept her movements gentle, her posture relaxed. Cole walked beside them at first, then mounted his own horse to ride alongside her. Together, they rode across the pasture. The wind brushed through their hair. Dust rose softly beneath their horses' hooves. Ghost Runner moved like flowing water, unafraid, guided only by trust. Cowboys cheered from the distance. Evelyn felt tears prick the back of her eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming beauty of the moment. Ghost Runner wasn't a wild storm anymore. He was a free spirit finally understood. When they returned, Cole helped her down from the saddle. His hands were gentle, his eyes warm with gratitude. "You did something impossible," he said quietly. "Something no one else could." Evelyn shook her head softly. "He just needed patience." Cole looked at her for a long moment. "The ranch, and we owe you more than we can ever say." Evelyn lowered her gaze shyly. She wasn't used to praise. "I only did what felt right." Cole smiled. A soft, genuine smile he rarely showed. "You have a home here for as long as you want. Not just a job. A place where you belong." Evelyn felt warmth bloom inside her chest. She had come to the West as a lonely mail-order bride with nowhere to go. But here, on this ranch, she had found purpose, respect, and something that felt like family. Ghost Runner snorted gently and nudged her shoulder, as if giving his own approval. The cowboys gathered around, cheering, laughing, patting Cole on the back, and offering Evelyn more admiration than she had ever received in her life. She smiled, feeling peace, belonging, and something like hope for the future. The wild stallion had found trust, and Evelyn Carter had found a new beginning.